It is well-known fact that within medical data that any age-related disease, whether it's congestive heart failure, whether it's erectile dysfunction, the person who has that disease has 50% less stem cells in circulation than the person of the same age that's healthy. By the time you reach age 30, you have a 90% reduction in circulating stem cells. Anybody will tell you, I'm 53, man, I don't have the body that I used to. When you hit 30, that's when you start feeling the pains, and your body doesn't recover the way that it used to. By taking 2 capsules of STEMREGEN release, you can increase 10 million new stem cells in circulation in your body within the next 2 to 3 hours. If you do that twice a day for 30 days, you've just added 600 million stem cells in circulation, constantly evolving, constantly working. And the beauty of this is...
Hi, my name is Chris Burris. I'm a longevity expert and the chief scientist at a lab focused on a longevity molecule. My primary focus is to help people live longer and better lives with science. Make sure to subscribe and share so you and your friends can live longer and better. Well, actually, so you and your friends can live beyond the norms. Hi, and welcome to the next episode of the Live Beyond the Norms Health and Longevity Podcast. Everyone's flying to Panama and spending tens of thousands of dollars on stem cell treatments. People like Tony Robbins and Joe Rogan are raving about the positive results with stem cells, but the cost is just too high. What if the key to your own stem cell repair is not tens of thousands of dollars and a trip to Panama, which I recommend, by the way. My wife is from Panama. Panama is absolutely amazing. But what if the answer is a simple set of pills that are a fraction of the cost? Our next guest, Ryan Riley, is here to save us tons of money and teach us about the importance of stem cells for health and longevity. A little bit about Ryan. Ryan is the CEO of STEMREGEN and a seasoned entrepreneur with a background in digital innovation and high-growth leadership. Formerly the founder and CEO of Cellcore Biosciences, he led the company to nearly $50 million in revenue and a $200 million acquisition in 2022. Now he is focused on advancing stem cell science through science-backed supplementation with a mission to enhance the body's natural repair system and redefine the future of health, longevity, and human performance. Hopefully we can help him with that mission in this interview today. Ryan, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, absolutely, Chris. Thank you so much for having me on. This is going to be a joy.
Before we jump into your areas of expertise, I want to go further back. I like to go much further back. What was it like growing up, little Ryan? Where did you grow up? What were your parents like? And if there was some event or someone you could pinpoint as the reason you would ultimately become a health and longevity disruptor, what or who would that be?
So that's a great question. I wasn't expecting it. So I grew up in a little tiny town called Reedley, California. Reedley, California is nestled up against the foothills of the Sierra Nevadas, just south of Fresno and just north of Visalia in the Central Valley. My dad actually was a school teacher. He graduated from Reedley High, went into the service, finished at college, came back to Reedley and taught for 33 years. So my dad is one of those guys that is just like, let's build roots. We'll stay here. And so I grew up I slept in the same room my entire life until I left home after graduating high school. This little tiny town, it's an agribusiness town. So I grew up in the stone fruit, peaches, plums, nectarines. There was a family friend who had a packing shed that my dad would actually work at in the summer so that we could go there as kids. I started working in a packing shed at 10 and 11, just early on. And that was just our life is living in Reedley, watching my dad coach track and football and baseball and softball and growing up. And I'm the baby of 5. I grew up with a nickname that most people outside of Reedley don't know. In fact, there are people in Reedley that I think don't even know my real name. And so I grew up in this like little tiny town that I absolutely love. The person early on who was a major influence in my life was a teacher, Mike Newkirk. My brother and I are about 14 months apart. And so Jared was really active in sports and water polo and volleyball. And those were things I always enjoyed. But because I had this little brother syndrome, I didn't want to do that. So I took a different path and I went into speech and debate. And Mike was my debate coach, and he literally challenged me in every way, shape, or form to in the form of communication and speech preparation and debate. And regardless of like, it wasn't an impact of longevity there. And I'll talk about that one in just a bit, but the influence that he had on helping me develop the ability to communicate ideas and thoughts in a way that could allow me to have an impact on people that's probably been the greatest skill I learned early on. I actually grew up with dyslexia and ADD, which wasn't even known back then. Like, it was called spring fever, right? And so I had to, like, being able to communicate and being able to drive, I realized early on that those were superpowers that I actually had, because I could think of things differently and faster, and I could really, and as new research has come out, even in the last several years, about dyslexia, I understand now why my brain worked the way it did back in high school and in school, and why it is a superpower that I have. So there's some interesting things that kind of go along with that. But early on, the person who really became the impactful side of longevity and health and wellness, I has to be my mom. My mom currently lives with us. She's 87 years old. She has grandma skills, and there's a big research out on grandma skills that if you learn how to knit or crochet and you do these skills on a daily basis, your cognitive response will be maintained through your older years, and because you have something to do and you have something to accomplish. And my mom had early onset leukemia as a child, and she battled through that, and she had celiacs. So she always constantly struggled with health issues but she never showed it. Like, she's the most positive, amazing individual. She was a school teacher with my dad. She went back to teaching school when I was in third grade. But the model that she gave me of positive outcome, positive life, regardless of your circumstances, and outliving all of the challenges and struggles that she had really became impactful to me, because it gave me that ability to just have regardless of what you're struggling with, regardless of your challenge. I think longevity is a lot more mental than physical, I personally believe. I think there's a good balance there, but I think it leans heavily on the mental side, because it has to be with your outlook, has to be with your positivity, has to be with the things that you're driving towards, have to have an impact on who you are and how you see yourself. And if you can't visualize yourself in a positive environment 20, 50 years from now, why would you live to that?
Yeah.
And I see my mom has probably set the greatest example of that. She's an incredible woman. And to this 87 years old, she does not take any medication except STEMREGEN. And it's so funny how she got on STEMREGEN was incredible. Christian Drapeau, who is our founder and chief science officer, he was at our house, and we had a company retreat at my place in Idaho. And she was kind of hovering along she was just a little wallflower listening to everything. And then when everybody left, she came up to me, and she's this like 4'0" little old, like first grade teacher, right? And she came up to me, and she's like, "How come I'm not on STEMREGEN?" And I literally looked at her, and I was like, "Mom, I don't want you to live to be 140. Like, I love you, but like, come on." And she kind of laughed at that, and she's on STEMREGEN, and it was interesting because 2 weeks later, she actually got I showed her how to get on our friends and family, and she got on, she orders it. And so she buys her own STEMREGEN and she takes it. And 2 weeks later, she came to me after she started taking it. She's like, "Ryan, I have to tell you something. I have been feeling a pain in my chest that concerned me, but I didn't want to tell anybody about it. This was something that I didn't want to cause concern." And so, a lot of people hold that inside. They don't share it because they don't want to be a bother, especially in my mom's position where she lives with us. And she's like, "After 2 weeks of being on STEMREGEN, that pain is gone." And I was like, "Oh crap, you are gonna live to be 140." So there's an impact there, and the love that I have for her, like that little bit of hit of who she is And the fact that STEMREGEN had that little bit of an effect on her is amazing. So yeah, 87 years old. She doesn't take anything but STEMREGEN right now.
And that has some parallels with some studies you're doing with heart conditions, right? So I'm sure we'll get into that. Interesting, so often you follow your big brother's path, and you were like, I'm not following that path. So Jared, you go that direction. I'm going somewhere else. Did you go to debates like in high school? Were you at the debate meets? I went to one. And I left with such a headache. I never went back. And I went into it thinking, like, I think I'm smart, and I definitely like to argue. So let me go into this. And I was not prepared for the experience, really.
Yeah, formal debate is intense. So I did formal debate. I did Lincoln Douglas debate. I did what was called Student Congress, where you actually you had bills that you had to argue for and against and get them ratified and sway other people into that conversation. My favorite thing was impromptu speaking. And impromptu speaking was really, really cool because what happened was you would walk into a room and they would give you a slip of paper with a topic on it. And you'd have 2 minutes to prepare an 8-minute speech and give it in class right then, right there. And so it was one of the greatest experiences for me personally because it helped me organize my thoughts. It helped me be able to think quickly. And because I had dyslexia, I was able to do that really, really fast. Memorization skills for me have always been 100%. Memorization was, I remember sitting in class when you had to read out loud and I would count people to find out how many people and then I would count paragraphs and I would memorize that paragraph. So when it came to me, I could read that paragraph out loud and not feel like I was a moron or an idiot. And it was that impact that kind of drove, like, all of that together gave me, I think, the skill set to be able to be pretty good. I was pretty good at it.
Have you ever done improv, like comedy improv?
Yeah, I did drama. I was Danny Zuko in our high school production. Like, I remember, I did. We did all that was my whole track was driving that, which was really, really fun.
And you didn't share your nickname.
I didn't. It was my nickname. So I grew up, I had really, really bad buck teeth. Like I was in braces for like 6 years. And now like people are in braces now for like 9 months. I was like, dude, we were guinea pigs 50 years ago. You know what I mean? And so my nickname was Beaver. In fact, when I graduated high school, they actually said Ryan Beaver Riley because they were concerned that people wouldn't know who I was. So yeah, well, it was Beaver. I grew up Beaver.
Mine, when I was younger, was Boomer. So, just to share. So you grow up, right? Parents are teachers, and so probably had intellectual conversations all the time, like all sorts of good stuff going on. You're the theater kid, right? What, in some sense, right? Debate isn't necessarily theater, and speech not necessarily. But what are you planning on going in college? Like, what are you shooting for?
You know, what's interesting about that is I went into college. So I went and served a 2-year, like after school, I floundered around. I went to a couple different junior colleges in California, and I wasn't finding myself. And I had a moment where I realized that I needed to figure myself out. I needed to figure out who I was and the direction that I was going. And I actually had an opportunity to serve a 2-year mission for my church. Now I didn't go anywhere crazy like Brazil or like, I didn't go anywhere. I went to Pennsylvania. Like there you go. It was an incredible experience because I had the opportunity to learn what service and serving others and forgetting about yourself for 2 years and just being out there to be in service of others really had an impact on my life. And so I came back from my mission. My wife and I, like, we wrote each other. Like, I met her before. We wrote each other for the 2 years I was gone. When I got back from my mission, like 3 days later, we were engaged. We were married a month and a half later, and we've been married for over 30 years now. But I got into school, and the first thing my wife and I bought, went into debt to buy was a computer. And my dad had a computer. In fact, I have an old Radio Shack TRS-80 color computer too that was like plugged into our TV. I still have it from my dad. And that was my first computer. And I loved technology. I loved computers. And we bought a computer. I got on the internet. And this was in 95, 96. So I was on the course of doing philosophy and political science. I fell in love with the internet, and I actually dropped out of school, got a job in the Bay Area, and started my career as my first job was at KNTV News Channel 11 as the webmaster. And then 9 months later, I went to work for a company called 8x8, and I was doing everything in a browser. I was building support infrastructure. I was building e-commerce back then. In early stage e-commerce, I was doing everything. And so my career has been in a browser, my entire career. Even now doing business in today's environment, it's still all online. It's still all in a browser. And so I have a unique experience to have been early stage internet and have come through the entire life cycle of the internet to today. And so everything I've done has been in a browser.
So I saw an interview you did, Decentralized Health Podcast, and there was one quote in it that you talked about finding your wife and finding a wife 100 times, I think it is. What is that quote?
Yeah. So a mentor of mine told me the secret of success in marriage is to find somebody that's 1,000 times better than you, and then convince her daily that you're worth it. And it's the convincing her daily that I'm worth it. I have to constantly remember that. And the beauty of this is that if you do it right, she feels that you're 1,000 times better than her. And she's convincing me daily that she's worth it. And so, and it's work. We've been married. We have 5 kids. We've been married over 30 years.
Also the same that you grew up, right? So you said you had, did you have 5 siblings or 4 siblings, 5 total?
So I was the youngest of 5, and now I have 5 kids.
Yeah. Okay.
So there's, and that wasn't planned. We have 4 boys. We have 4 boys that are ages 26 to 20. 3 of those 4 boys are currently married. One of them is serving a mission in El Salvador. He comes home this year, which is really exciting. And then I have a 11-year-old little girl. So there's an 8-year difference between Dallin, who's 20, and Hattie, who turns 12 this year. And that little girl she rocked our world. Like she was hard. She messed us up, man. She wasn't expected. In fact, my wife had an IUD in and an ablation surgery. So I did the math on it. It's like a 0.018% chance of that little girl coming into the world, or 0.0018% chance. And she did, and she's incredible. We have to work daily at it to convince each other that we're worth it. And that's, I think, one of the reasons why we've been successful in our marriage for 30 years.
Another thing in that interview is you mentioned that, and you already kind of touched on AD, maybe HD, but at least ADD and dyslexia are superpowers. My son has both and is probably a smidge on the spectrum with how he struggles to relate with people. What message, right, having gone through the experience, actually at a time, one of the things that you described is this impromptu speech, right, where you had a couple of minutes with no internet to come up with a 6-minute talk or an 8-minute talk, whatever that was. Like, I think it's important to point out, because today's people are going, oh yeah, give me that much time, I could shoot.
I could chat GPT. Yeah, exactly.
That wasn't a time when you just had to pull stuff, and if you didn't know much about it, you're like pulling parallel topics and trying to draw them together. What messaging would you give to yourself, or say in my case, my son, about his ADHD and dyslexia?
So interesting question, because my son Connor, he struggled with ADHD early on. Like in first grade, we had a teacher come to us and say, I think we need to talk. And we saw it. And Connor's one of those kids that just is full of love and life. But we knew school was going to be his biggest challenge. And I remember this moment where Connor was in middle of high school. He was maybe it was early high school. He was just done. He was so frustrated, so challenged and he was just done. It's one of those moments where, as a father, you've got to dig deep to figure out what you're going to do to support this kid because you have nothing. And he was done. And goes back to my mom. I went upstairs because I needed to just take a break. I didn't want frustration. I didn't want this to escalate. So I took a break and went upstairs and I had a thought come to me that to look at your scrapbook. And I was like, dude, I haven't looked at my scrapbook in years. My mom kept everything. So I actually, and she gave us all of our scrapbooks. We still have them. I pulled the scrapbook out and I started flipping through pictures and I started flipping through the scrapbook. And in the middle of that scrapbook was a manila envelope that was 3-hole punched in. And I was like, what's this? And I opened it up and I pulled out every detention note, every report card, every slip of paper of behavioral concerns, like every single thing that my mom kept it all. And I broke down at that moment. I broke down because I realized that Connor is me in a different world and in a different environment and I took that down there and I said, Connor, look at this. And I sat down, I went through it with him and I said, hey, you see how this says a B? I was like, look closely at that because these were old carbon printed report cards that came in the mail. I said, look closely at this. Do you notice how it's been changed? That was an F and I changed it to a B. We didn't have power school back then. Like I changed my grade so I didn't get in trouble. That's how bad it was. I was like, but look at this, detention slip, behavioral notice. Look at the notes on this. Has problems completing tasks, talkative in school, doesn't complete homework, all of these things. And I was like, Connor, do you see, am I any different than you? And he looks at me and he's just in tears. And I was like, it's going to be okay. You just have to get through it today. We'll figure it out and you'll figure it out and you'll be stronger from it because you do. But I'm telling you right now that whatever your environment is and whatever you're doing today is a challenge, but it's going to be a strength to you in the future. And I think that kids with dyslexia, with challenges, especially boys, I think, and being a dad of 4 boys, I've seen it where the environment that they're in today does not support them the way it should. The school is not designed for boys. It's not. They're not creating leaders. They're not standing these young men up as leaders and the opportunity to help them influence each other in ways that supports them. It's not designed that way. And so we tried to foster as much of that as possible at home. But I think that just the advice that I would give parents, you're your son's greatest advocate. Nobody cares about your son more than you. And understand that, like Connor today is married. He's serving in the military. He has a son on the way. In fact, I just became a grandpa for the very first time this weekend.
Congratulations. That's awesome.
I know it is. It's pretty cool. But like success is relative. Success isn't a stake in the ground that you can shoot for. There is successful individuals throughout all areas of life that if you're a good person, if you support your wife and if you love your family and if you can drive to, like, if you have that opportunity to affect change around you, you're a good person and success is relative. I've been fortunate enough to be blessed to be put in situations where I can serve and support others. And I have that opportunity to do so. And I don't take that lightly, but you can be successful. Like my parents were school teachers. I slept in the same bedroom and shared it with my other 2 brothers most of my life. You know, success is relative. And I think the beauty about what success can be is, especially when you're working with somebody that is challenged with ADHD and dyslexia, in today's environment, those are problems and we need to fix you. When they're your superpower and you need to embrace them to be able to identify how do you become more of who you are by embracing what you have.
Thank you for sharing that. And One thing that pops up, right, because you're talking about your very parallel experience, was the system better then, right? I mean, you probably were paddled, right? Like, because paddling happened in my school. I don't know if that.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Right.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
was that a better system? Is now, and then the system fundamentally different, but like just throw in devices where there is an escape from the pain, right? The struggle, where I can just throw myself into social media and start swiping, and then I've got instant gratification. Like that's clearly not good. Like, I don't have any doubts about that. But is there a better system? And I don't want to spend too much on this because I want to kind of hop into health and wellness here.
but I think this is part of health and wellness. I really do, because I believe connection is one of the most important longevity tools we have. Is the ability to be connected. I believe that dads today, if you think about the history over the last 75 years, right? I'm 52, I'm turning 53. So if you look at the last 75 years, my father would be considered a boomer. Like the mentality of the boomer generation was, you're 18, get out of the house. Like, fortunately, that wasn't the picture or the thought that my dad had. And I had an incredibly loving father and mom. So I had a great example of what a good parent should be. And so now that I see my son, my oldest son, Braden, dude, I'm going to get emotional on this. Sorry. Now that I see my oldest son, Braden, who's had his first child, and I watch him and I ask myself, did I do enough to be the dad, the example for him? Did I make enough connection with him so that he can make that connection with his little girl? You know what I mean? And then I sit back and I watch him and I see who he is. And I'm like, he's going to be fine. Sorry, I'm getting emotional because, like, seriously, this just happened like less than a week ago. And that little girl is freaking amazing. But I watch my son and I sit there and I was like, yeah, I think I did. And I think that's one of the most important things that we can do is build connection with our kids. Like, have that, like, we've lost in the US. I've traveled all over the world. I've lived in India for about 9 months. I love Mexico. I travel all over the world. And you know, the one thing that I find in common with people that live long years is they have multi-generational families.
Yep. In the house.
And yeah. In the house. And that boomer mentality that was our parents was, you're 18, get out of the house. It's like, freaking why? Why? Do you know what? And look, there's a lot of conspiracies we could talk about. Well, that creates taxation. Like, that was the shift that allowed somebody to have to go work and pay and tax. And like, there's a lot of things that you could talk about that. But really what it did is it put ourselves in a situation where the parents that are becoming parents today don't necessarily have the example of parenthood that I had growing up, which I think is one of the biggest challenges in health and longevity that we have. A good example, I was talking with an individual and he's like, you guys are trying to live to, like, you're doing everything you can so you can live longer. He's like, I just want to die. He's been through divorce. He's been through things. He's had challenges in his life. It's struggles. And he's like, I don't even know that I want to be here anymore. Why do you guys want to live longer? So the greatest thing you can do in order to support longevity and health is mental and build connections. And I love the fact I was sitting in a conference and there was, it was a small conference and they did they had out these cards and you sat down at your table and there's these cards and and it was a icebreaker card, right? So it's like your name, your hobbies, what do you do when you're not, and one of the questions was, what is the single greatest compliment you get most often? And dude, without hesitation, I said, Dad. I have 4 boys who are 22, who are now parents, who are adults, who still call me dad, who still want to hang out with me. In fact, my third son, Davis, Davis is the type of kid that, like, you couldn't tell that kid to do anything. If you told him how to do something, he'd do it a different way just to prove you wrong. Like, but he's incredibly talented at accomplishing what he wants to do. And he was going to school, young married, like just been married just a little over a year. And he came to me and he's like, Dad, I feel like I'm missing out on the opportunity to learn from you. He's like, can I work with you? Is there anything that I can do to be a part of what you're doing? And I was like, yeah. So I put him to work and I haven't paid him. He's been working for me 8 months and I haven't paid him. because he just wants to be there and he wants to be a part of it, and he's learning what supply chain is, he's learning what project management is, he's learning, and he'll get paid. It's kind of the family joke that I don't pay any of my kids. But he'll get paid. Like, there's the opportunity. And for the fact that my kids want to still call me dad and want to be a part of that, that's what longevity is. That's what true lifespan becomes. Yeah, I want to, and because of that, I want to be as healthy as possible so that I can live as long as possible with that support and environment that my wife and I have built.
Man, that's amazing. And we could end the podcast here, but we have stuff to cover.
We have a lot more to do. I mean, sorry. Well, and I'm going to do a shameless plug because this kind of fits. I have been inspired in this concept, and this is one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about it. I have been inspired to identify. I've always wanted to write leadership books. I grew up reading Stephen R. Covey. I grew up reading, Benjamin Franklin's the Art of Habits, and like I love leadership books. I have good friends that have written books. Dr. Benjamin Hardy, who's a phenomenal author, it comes out and like, I don't want to compete with him. And so what I did is I took a step back and I said, how can I influence at a younger level the power of leadership? And so I'm writing a book series called the Books for Boys. And these are leadership books in the form of story. And it's funny because there's 4 boys and a girl in this team, which is my kids. And they all have personalities of my kids. And they go through these adventures in their little town that I grew up in, basically. They go through these adventures, and there's leadership principles that are taught. Each book has a leadership principle. Each chapter emphasizes that leadership principle. And then I've built a online platform that allows these kids, after they read the chapter or the book, to go online and to have offline experiences and to chat with these characters in the books. And I've worked really hard to keep it safe and secure so they can chat with these characters in the books, and the characters in the books will give them challenges that they can do offline to become better leaders. And the parents have the ability to be mentors to these children as they're going through these leadership, and they're designed for 9 to 12-year-olds. And the first ones I've written 3 right now. First one's gone through editing. They're all of them are written. We're going through editing and production. Hopefully they'll come out in May. But I'm really excited about the opportunity to lean into hopefully creating a connection. Because the idea is that one of the things I love doing with my boys was I would read the books that they were supposed to read in school. And I would have conversations about what they were reading so that we could talk and just create connection. That's a value. That's a tool. It's not the only tool, but it's a tool that parents can have. If dads are struggling on how to be a dad, it's create connection by doing something together, and reading and having conversation and thought is a way to stimulate those conversations with those connections, and the offline challenges that are part of the online experience are going to be really fun. So just the same as plug. Hopefully they'll come out in May.
Hey, super quick break from the podcast. Some way that you can help support the podcast. We're going to give you a 50% coupon on one of our most popular products. Remember, this is a high quality extra virgin olive oil, and as much of the ESS 60 molecule as we can get to dissolve in it, you can get it for 50% off. If you're not a customer yet, go ahead and type in a comment, and actually go ahead and type in LBTN, Live Beyond the Norms, in the comments below. We'll reach out to you and get you that coupon code. Actually type in LBTN and the word coupon, and we'll make sure we get that coupon code before. Now, if you're already a customer, you can also get a 50% coupon, and what you do is just submit a review either on iTunes or on Spotify, and take a picture or a screenshot. Get that review to us at info@mybattlec.com, and we'll get that 50% coupon to you. Thank you for supporting the podcast. Thank you for trying out our products, and back to the show. That's very cool. And we'll have ways people can connect with you so that they can kind of be aware
absolutely.
of when that's coming out. All right, so we're here to talk about stem cells. We're here talk about STEMREGEN. You're the CEO of STEMREGEN. Actually, when I first had a conversation with Christian Drapeau, he was actually on my summit, the Uncovering the Secrets of Longevity Summit. You were not in the picture at that time. So how did you get connected with Christian?
So I saw Christian. He had 10 minutes on stage at a conference that I was at, and it was after we exited, about a year after we exited Cellcore. And in that 10 minutes, I don't know if it was divine. I believe it was. I knew that I had to work with Clint. I knew that that was the next opportunity for me. And so I did everything I could to prove myself to him. I'm an investor in his company. I worked for the first 9 months to just prove myself. And then in the beginning of 24, he gave me the incredible honor to be CEO of STEMREGEN.
When you think back to that, brief 10 minutes, first of all, what was the conference? I think you kind of offline mentioned Mastermind, maybe describe that a little bit. And is there anything in particular, was it the whole package, or was there a couple of key points that really resonated with you to like, okay, this is a big deal?
I don't know that I can pinpoint it specifically. It was just this incredible, overwhelming feeling that he was the next person that I needed to support. We talked. There's a video that I absolutely love, and I think everybody should see it. It's about the first follower. It's about this guy who's at a concert on the side of a hill and he's dancing. He's this crazy lone dude all out there by himself, and the message is about how important that first follower is. Somebody that can come to him, that can champion him, that can be embraced by him. And then because of that, somebody else is like, oh, hey, they're not I don't have to be the person alone. And then all of a sudden 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 10 and 20. And then you have a movement and everybody is up dancing. I love being that first follower. I love supporting an individual that has incredible opportunity in front of him. And I believe that I have the gift and talent to be able to see that in people. And I saw it in Christian, and I immediately came home and I told my team, I said, I got it. I know what we're doing for the next 5 years. And they were like, what? And they met Christian, and it's not easy, like growing and scaling a business, and supporting that lone dude that's out dancing on the side of the hill by himself is not easy. But it's incredibly rewarding. And you have the opportunity to impact so many lives, especially with the technology that Christian has, and understanding how disease and longevity and health challenges are tied to your repair process and your repair system in your body, and how stem cells play that role has been incredible. And the work that we're doing, I believe, has the potential to really, truly change the way people look at disease and decline. And I think that there's some important things here. So let's get into it.
So going into that talk, what kind of awareness of stem cells did you have?
Nothing. Absolutely nothing. For me, health I was on my own personal health journey, and it was tied to gut and gut health because that's what Cellcore was. I didn't have hardly any, I knew what stem cells were, kinda, but I thought I did. It wasn't. And so it wasn't even about the topic. It was about him. It was about Christian. It was about the feeling that I had when I heard him speak, and the opportunity that was presented in my mind's eye of where this could go and who he was.
Anytime I'm learning something new, and this is like you're about to kind of pour the next 5 years of your life into it, there's like things that you got to go read and say, okay, maybe does this make sense? Were there a couple of things that you had to go like check some boxes to make sure things were, I don't know, on the up and up? I know Christian, so that wasn't much of a debate, but like, what did you come off and go like, oh, I got to double check these things? Having
dyslexia and ADHD is interesting because with ADHD, you can go broad on a lot of topics, but when you focus in on one, you go deep. And so after hearing Christian, I went deep on that in ways that, like, I think he's still impressed that I was able to learn as much as I learned. I read his book multiple times. I listened to podcasts. I went deep on who he was. And then with dyslexia, it gives you the incredible ability to look at things. Dyslexia, you can take an idea and a concept and you can turn it upside down. It's like a Rubik's Cube. That idea becomes a Rubik's Cube to me. And I can flip it and turn it and move it in many different ways until it becomes a whole, and then continue to look at it. The only downside is I can't spell worth anything. So ChatGPT has unlocked my ability to write, which is fun. So I went deep in that realm of who he was, and I immediately saw the impact in the studies and his name across multiple scientific papers, across multiple studies that have been done over the course of his time, and have just been truly honored and blessed to be a part of this in a small way, which is exciting.
So what is the technology? Why is it so important?
In a nutshell, and this is I think this is the greatest thing that Christian did in about early on in the late 90s, and he came across an ingredient from Klamath Lake called AFA. And he was brought in to do scientific research and study the mechanism of actions and the effects of the AFA on the body. And as he was going through this research project, he started seeing all these outlining cases of things that he couldn't explain. And in most time when you're doing research, there's always going to be outliers. There's going to be 1 to 2 things that you just can't explain, and you just set them aside as notes, and just continue to move on with the core of your research. But when those outliers start to compound into hundreds and 200s and 300s cases, you have to stop and take a moment to say, okay, what's truly happening here? And these are outliers of things that at that time in 2001, from a medical outlook, were not possible. In fact, those same things are still happening today as people are using these products and these ingredients. So he started digging into the research, and he started reading everything he could, and he came across an article. I think it was one of the first articles that was written about the effects of stem cells in the body. And the article discussed how they were able to identify stem cells migrating and becoming a heart cell. And that triggered the whole concept. And then he found another article as he dug deeper that stem cells could actually be identified and tagged becoming a brain cell in mice and a liver cell. And so in his mind, he's like, if stem cells can become heart, brain, or liver, then they are the repair system of the body. Stem cells are at the heart of the repair system of the body. And he's like, literally in 2001, he's like, we just found the cure to disease. And it's taken him 26 years to be able to have a platform where people are finally beginning to listen. And the whole process, the whole concept is a process that he has identified called endogenous stem cell mobilization. And he's been doing the work that he's been doing on botanicals throughout the world. And he's identified many, many different botanicals, and he's narrowed it down to 3 that have a tremendous effect on mobilizing stem cells from your own bone marrow into your body. So there's a difference. When people think of stem cells, they think of doing an injection, right? So they go and they do a localized injection or they do a systemic injection, but it's external stem cells being applied into an area where hopefully they'll have an absorption rate greater than 17%. So if you think about it, they do an injection into the shoulder for a pitcher in Major League Baseball. They're doing about 100 million stem cells injected into that area. There's about a 17% absorption rate. So you're getting about 17 million stem cells that actually take effect and have the ability to have an impact. And it works. These athletes, the individuals that like in the knee, in the hip, in these areas of joint where people have struggles and pains and challenges, it works. There's people that see a benefit to stem cell injections. Well, that's an outside source coming in. The interesting thing with what the work that Christian has been doing is he's identified how these 3 different botanicals have an effect of releasing your own stem cells into the body. And the conservative estimate, by taking 2 capsules of STEMREGEN release, you can increase 10 million new stem cells in circulation in your body within the next 2 to 3 hours. So if you do that twice a day for 30 days, you've just added 600 million stem cells in circulation on the constantly evolving, constantly working. And the beauty of this is that it is known by the time you reach age 30, you have a 90% reduction in circulating stem cells. And it can just continues to decline from there. And if you think about it, anybody will tell you, I'm 53, anybody will tell you, man, I don't have the body that I used to. Like when you hit 30, that's when you start feeling the pains. And your body doesn't recover the way that it used to. And everybody, like, if you start putting that correlation between the number of circulating stem cells and your body's ability to recover after an activity, you can immediately draw that connection. And that's exactly what Christian did. He started drawing the connection. And the beauty of this is there's a lot of other people doing the research on this as well. It is well-known fact that within medical data and the research papers that are out there, that any age-related disease, whether it's congestive heart failure, whether it's erectile dysfunction, any age-related disease, the person who has that disease has 50% less stem cells in circulation than the person of the same age that's healthy. There's a direct correlation. We're actually in the process of working with some professional and universities, professional athletes in some universities, to actually show a direct correlation between an athlete that steps onto the field. Two athletes step onto the field. One of them, and their makeup, body, everything is exactly the same. One of them thrives. One of them has just everything works. The other is prone to injury. Now, this is a question that has plagued sports therapists and player development for years. Why does one person excel? The other person is prone to injury. Well, we're in the process of identifying that story that the person who is prone to injury has less stem cells in circulation than the person that doesn't. There's a direct correlation between the number of stem cells in circulation and your body's ability to repair and recover. So if you think of it from a concept of decline, as you get older, your body constantly is in a state of repair. You get a new heart. I think they said you get a new heart every 30 years. So if you think of your first heart for the first 30, and then your second heart from 30 to 60, when do we start having health problems? Like 60 and beyond. And that's because your body doesn't have the ability to continue to recover and repair. And if it can't repair those needed, because it doesn't have the circulating tools to be able to do so, then your body is drawn into a state of decline. Now, the interesting thing about longevity and this, red light, there's people that do red light therapy. There's people that do cryotherapy. There's people like hyperbaric chambers. There's all of these things that are designed to help your body recover and repair. Cold plunging, everything has an effect and on the circulating stem cells in your body. So that if you can stack STEMREGEN release, which with 2 capsules, you get 10 million new stem cells, with other modalities of repair and recovery, you're only providing the tools necessary for your body to recover in a way that it was designed to do. And that's the premise and concept of STEMREGEN, is to be able to support your body's natural ability to repair. That's it. And the cool thing about that is if we can do that, if we can truly support the body's ability to repair, what will happen? And that's the question we're asking. Now, I'm here to tell you from a FDA, regulations and claims, across the board, all we do is support the body's natural ability to repair. That's what we do. That's the mechanism of action. It's well documented. We know exactly what our product does. The question that we're asking is, if we can truly do that, what will happen? And that's where the beauty comes in. That's where the magic happens.
I know in my conversation with Christian, really kind of fascinating stuff about different kind of herbs and botanicals that release stem cells. and how he understood that they weren't the same mechanism, right? Because there's a different timeline on when they're actually released. And then actually incorporating or finding, I think it was really kind of discovering that there were some that would actually push these stem cells into tissue, right? I don't know if you didn't mention that, and I know that there's multiple products now. Is that still incorporated into the main product?
Yeah, absolutely. So and that's the beauty about what the product does is there's three main ingredients that have an effect of releasing stem cells in the body. And basically the mechanism that's occurring is these three ingredients mimic the signal of repair that happens in cell-to-cell communication. When there is a damaged tissue, there is a signal that goes out saying, I need help. That signal is inflammation. That's part of the process of repair. Inflammation is a tool that your body uses to be able to identify that there is an area that needs help. Like we talk about inflammation, and systemic inflammation is such a bad thing. And yes, systemic inflammation is because what's happening, and the reason why you have to be able to manage that, you have so much inflammation in your body that the stem cells don't know where to go. There's so much noise. Think about static on an old TV or on the radio. When static would come in, when interference would come in, that wasn't a good signal. And that cell-to-cell communication is so vital because what happens is when there is a need of repair, a mechanism occurs where a signal is produced so that stem cells are released from the bone marrow into the bloodstream and can travel to that signal and accomplish repair. The three main ingredients in our product actually mimic that signal, which is why they're getting released. And so we can easily identify. Now, the other products in our ingredient help with the mobilization of those stem cells through and into the tissue. And so that's the beauty of what Christian has done. He's been able to document and identify all of the effects of endogenous stem cell mobilization and how they have a role in playing to support the body's natural repair system.
So I remember when I interviewed him, I walked away because I didn't think of this at the time. We're mobilizing stem cells out of red bone marrow, right? Typically, that's where it's coming from. Red bone marrow shrinks with age. Is there any concern that we're actually kind of expediting the shrinkage of bone marrow? Like, are we pulling out because, obviously if we were, and I don't think we are, but I want to get your opinion. If we were, that would maybe not be the best long-term plan, great short-term, but not long-term. What do you, and I think, maybe even Christian hadn't thought about that when I sent the email to him at the time. But anyway, what are your thoughts?
No, there's absolutely, and that's a question that we get all the time. Well, are we going to run out? There is zero scientific evidence that your body will ever get to the point where it doesn't produce any more stem cells. If it does, you would die. That's and that's a known factor. But if you think about it, what are the things that actually create stem cell mobilization naturally without taking any supplement or anything? People that work out. Well, look at these athletes that are driven to exercise or to work out. They're constantly reducing high volumes of stem cells in circulation in their body. There's no evidence in any of the scientific literature that states that your body will run out of stem cells. The beauty about what happens, and there's actually proof, and that stem cells have the ability to be stored and make their way back into the bone cell where they can be able to repopulate. And there was a study that was done that was a bone marrow that was completely dried, depleted, and they took a single stem cell and they put it into the bone marrow, and within time, that bone marrow was completely rejuvenated. So your body has, that's the beauty of this concept is all we're doing is supporting that natural ability, that repair system of the body. And we're just providing the tools at a greater rate so that your body can be able to handle it. And those that aren't the excess tools, and the excess stem cells will actually make their way back into the bone marrow to be able to repopulate that bone marrow so that they can be ready to be released again.
It's interesting when the story of the mechanism is so core to how the body functions, right? And then so you probably get this. We're like, well, what about the liver? And you're like, well, do stem cells help the liver? Yes. Well, but what about the heart, or what about the muscle? And I bump into that with my product as well. Is there any place you think like this might not be of value? Is there anything you're like, yeah, I wouldn't waste my time on, I don't know, this particular concern?
I think the best way to do this is through some anecdotal observations that we've had from some of our practitioners. One of our practitioners, he's a podiatrist, so he deals injuries from the knee down. So a lot of neuropathy, a lot of open wounds that just don't heal. And as he has incorporated the full protocol into his practice, it's interesting the way he approaches this with his patients, because he says, hey, look, this is something that's new. I've seen it have tremendous effect on the people that I'm working with. But the interesting thing about this is that your body knows what needs to be repaired. So while we're going to work, he is actually seen a reversal of neuropathy in the legs because he puts people on the product. But at the same time, he had this one gal who her shoulders were so bad, she couldn't do anything. And she came in and she was like, I saw her 2 months before this and she was just down and devastated. She just looked like she couldn't do anything. She was in so much pain. I put her on the product. 2 months later, she came in and she was a different person. And she was like, yeah, I mowed, it was 4th of July weekend. I mowed the lawn and she had full control. So the story behind this is that your body knows what it needs. Your body knows where repair is necessary, and it is going to prioritize and go for the highest points needed first and then prioritize down. So when he gives people the product, he's like, look, I believe that it will have an effect in this area, but I also know that you will come back and it will affect you systemically because your body knows how to repair.
And that's 2 capsules a day.
2 capsules twice. Yeah, 2 capsules a day. If you can push it a little bit more with 2 capsules twice a day. There's even evidence when we go into doing a clinical trial or one of our studies, we have a couple ongoing studies right now. One is on congestive heart failure. The other is on Parkinson's. And the protocol that we do with STEMREGEN release on that is 2 capsules 3 times a day. We keep it straight and forward. And the outcomes that we're seeing through these studies are just incredible.
That's awesome. So congestive heart failure or disease and Parkinson's, that's pretty amazing. You want to talk about, I know you have, when I first met with Christian, it was 1 product. Now you're at 3, I think. Talk about kind of what are the differences there, and then we can get into our wrap-up questions.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. So the beauty about this whole system is we're supporting the entire process of stem cell mobilization, endogenous stem cell mobilization and endogenous repair. So if you think about it, we've already talked about the release of stem cells in the body. So we have 3 products. One is called release, which releases stem cells. The other is signal, and then mobilize. And the entire process is releases the stem cells in your body. Signal reduces the noise in the body. It's that systemic. We talked a little bit about the cell-to-cell communication and how that has an effect on the mobilization of stem cells. Well, if there's systemic inflammation in your body, then that signaling would get disrupted. So as signal reduces systemic inflammation, it reduces the body's noise that's going on in the system and allows the stem cells to know where they're needed most. Mobilize is full of ninokinase and another number of different ingredients that support your capillaries and your microcapillaries. If you look at a stem cell's like 30 microns in size, and your microcapillaries are 5 microns. Like, how do you shove a 30 micron like stem cell through into a 5 micron so that it can actually break the blood barrier and get into the tissues? Well, that's what Mobilize does. It actually supports the health and elasticity of those capillaries so that they can be able to expand and grow so that stem cells can be able to flow properly through the system. So release, signal reduces the noise so signaling can occur, and Mobilize allows the mobilization of those stem cells. And those are the 3 main products.
Excellent. Well, before we get to our wrap-up questions, any summary, anything maybe we didn't touch on that you'd like to hit?
No, man, we covered a lot, and sorry that there was a lot of personal in there. You get me talking about my family and me. I think the biggest thing is that I truly believe, I truly believe that the work that Christian Drapeau is doing, if people will just take an opportunity to step back, clear your minds, like really look into it, that this has the ability to change the way we look at medicine. It has the opportunity to there's so much that this concept of endogenous stem cell repair and endogenous stem cell mobilization can do for the human body if we just give it a chance. I've seen it in my personal life. I've seen it with my mom. I've seen it in many others. And the reports and the research that we're doing shows that this does have a tremendous effect on your ability to recover and repair the body systemically.
Excellent. All right, time for our wrap-up questions. Ryan, do you have a target age that you want to live to?
You know what? I don't. Honestly, I don't. I just want to be able to be actively engaged in the life of my family and friends as long as possible.
How long do you think humans can live?
Well, there's the centennials. There's absolutely evidence that, I think the one interview that I saw, the gentleman lived to be at 138, 140. Your body has a tremendous capacity to live and wants to live. I believe that we're barely scratching the surface on what our potential is. And as we naturally support our body's ability to recover, to repair, and just doing simple modalities, and creating a regular cadence of your own protocols of what you do. I have a power plate at home. I love being able to do vibration therapy, sauna, cold plunge, infrared, like red light therapy. All of these things together will have an effect on you. And you can tell an immediate impact that these modalities that are centered around longevity and the 12 hallmarks of longevity are real and they have an effect. So I would love to see the day when this becomes more mainstream, and I think it's getting there, so that people can truly see the benefit from supporting your body's natural ability to repair.
So you're 52, 53, right on the cusp. You say potentially 140. So we're talking somewhere between there and then. I always like to kind of push. Is the number 100? Is the number...
So my wife and I just started living our second 50. So 100 years old for us.
I like it.
And for us, I'm telling you, man, that the first 50 was hard. The second 50 is amazing. So yeah, we're really excited about what's in front of us. I'm only 3 years old.
Exactly. Three of the next 50. I love it. What are 2 to 3 protocols, habits, mindsets, let's call them shortcuts because everybody likes shortcuts, to longevity and a long health span that you would share? So
my personal routine is I wake, I'm an early to bed, early to rise. 10 o'clock bedtime, 5 o'clock, I'm up. Sometimes 4 to 5, I'm up. And that routine is pretty standard. My own personal study and prayer, my own personal meditation. I begin every day that way. And then I go and I sit in the sauna for 20 minutes with red light therapy sauna. From there, I cold plunge. And then I go and there's a number of different things. From there, I'll stand on a vibration plate and then I'll dead hang. I believe for everybody, like dead hanging and grip strength is one of the most important things you could do. If you can dead hang for a minute, you're in great shape. And it's interesting to see what happens as you begin the process of dead hanging, and you go from a minute to a minute and a half, and then you get to the point where you can do a lock off and hang, and your body has tremendous. So that's when you're hanging this way.
Oh,
right?
Okay, yeah.
In a lock off, and you're hanging rigid, strength, and you move into that dead hang in different ways. And then you're bringing your feet parallel. Like in a hanging position, you do as much as you can. It's amazing how much that strengthens your shoulders, how it stretches your body. So those are my favorite things to do. The other thing that I do is community. I'm engaged in active communities and friendships and love and family constantly.
Excellent. What are one or two things that you think people get absolutely wrong regarding longevity and a long health span?
So it's interesting you say that. There was and I don't know who this was, and I don't want to offend anybody, but there was a conference that came out last year that was called "Don't Die."
Yeah.
First of all, that's a whole negative approach to longevity. The idea of "don't die," you could walk across the street, get hit by a bus, and that has nothing to do with whether you did red light in the morning or not, right? So in my that idea of that fear of death, to me, is the wrong reason to do this. Fear of death, to me, is that negative approach to why you're doing this. You have to have a reason to live, and to live the fullest in your life. That's what longevity is about. It's not about don't die. It's about living more.
Excellent. Ryan, how can people contact you?
I have a couple of different online platforms. fifthhammer.com is my business concept and philanthropy and funding side of things. It's so fifthhammer.com. You can go to STEMREGEN.
Right?
Yeah, spelled out. You could go to STEMREGEN.co. I'm Ryan at. I'm on like Instagram and LinkedIn. I'm pretty easy to find. If you do a search for Ryan Riley from Idaho, I'm all over the place. You'll get me.
Excellent. And what in the near future are you excited about?
Being a grandpa for the very first time. I mean, honestly, that's the biggest impact right now. Is I'm excited about the future. I mean, there's so much going on in this world where people are so afraid of the future, whether it's political, economical. There's a lot happening in this world at this time. I'm excited for the good that we can bring to the table, because we have a tremendous capacity for good. And I'm excited for where the people that lean into that side of the future are really the ones that are going to have longevity.
Excellent. Well, you can find him at fifthhammer, spell that out, .com, STEMREGEN.co. Just search Ryan Riley from Idaho and you'll find him. Ryan, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Chris. This has been amazing.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Live Beyond the Norms podcast. Make sure to subscribe and follow. Also, make sure not to be that guy, the guy sharing this podcast with people who are not interested in living beyond the norms. If you would like to learn more about the ESS60 molecule, the molecule responsible for the single longest longevity experimental result on mammals in history, a full 90% extension of life, visit myvitalc.com. That's myvitalc as in carbon.com.